Hey everyone, Sean here, and today I wanted to sit down and talk about one of my favorite racing franchises of all time, Gran Turismo, with its new title, Gran Turismo 7, that came out March 4th of 2022. But before we get into all that, I wanted to remind you guys to like and subscribe. It really helps out, and I do appreciate it, guys. Now, let me preface this review by saying that I've been a huge fan of Gran Turismo since Gran Turismo 5 on the PS3. A late bloomer, I know. I've always loved and appreciated the love and care the devs at Polyphony Digital put into these games overall. This franchise has always pleased many car enthusiasts such as myself because of that. Ever since I was a middle school kid, I love cars. I've grown to appreciate not only their looks, but the history and engineering prowess behind them. So this was a natural fit for me. As GT7 was announced for this current generation, I of course was excited to try this out at launch. After playing this for a couple of weeks on my PlayStation 5 since its release, I think I'm ready to talk about it now. Let's lay out one of the biggest aspects of these games, the graphics and presentation. This was always treated as one of the premier video games on the PlayStation to display the graphical power of its consoles, and I think this is no exception. While I do think this isn't a complete revolution in terms of graphical leap, this still looks fantastic in my eyes. Players will have polarizing opinions, but I think it looks great on my 4K TV. As before, one cannot deny that same love and care has once again splooged into here, but with an upgrade of course. Digital Foundry, in my opinion, did a great job analyzing the intricate details offered for this racing simulator and makes players really appreciate it all the more with what was achieved here. There's just a lot of detail, especially if you run the game in ray tracing mode, which is something I recommend overall. Of course, it should be noted that this only applies to replays and cutscenes in the game, as it previously stated prior to its release. It's just really cool to be able to just zoom in on the cars and see all the little speckles of metallic or whatever paint you slap on in your cars and other such parts like headlights, mirrors, and so on. It would have been nice to see all this applied into the actual race, but it's to me a non-issue all in all. The frame rate is butter smooth 60 frames per second consistently when it matters most. I guess this generation isn't quite ready for consoles that can run at 40K 60 with ray tracing and all that stuff all the time. But even so, the actual gameplay experience doesn't fall too short on the looks department as the game continues to feel awesome. The weather is really complemented by this upgrade as well. For example, whenever the road is wet from the rain, the light reflections and such are accurately portrayed. It even features water droplets on the windshield, which adds more to that particular experience, adding more layers to that overall graphical experience. On top of that, the game features a nifty customization for your cars, although I have not dared to dive deep into that feature, but judging from other players, it's pretty cool. Racing in this game just feels just as awesome as what players can expect from Gran Turismo. The physics are top notch. It is a racing simulator game, so you can't do things you usually do in games like Burnout or Need for Speed, for example. This simulates real-life racing, so you gotta know how to enter and exit a corner with some technique and finesse. It's almost like a baseball player trying to play tennis for the very first time. Anyway, this sounds like a game for the hardcore racing and car enthusiasts only. Actually, this game this time around go out their way to welcome and show newcomers the ropes of Gran Turismo. It was also welcoming for people who haven't played these games for a while, like myself, as someone who only played GT Sport in a short burst. This could come off as dry or boring for players who have been in the game for a very long time consistently. Now, with all that said, once you get a good grip of Gran Turismo, I can guarantee you that you do a lot better in real life kart racing once things go back to normal, of course. But also, you may notice things you've picked up from GT do apply to other racing games, at least to some extent. Extra layers are added here as you can experience more of that haptic feedback from PS5 controllers. It was really neat as I was able to feel the various and subtle vibrations as advertised during turns, but not so much of a game changer in the grand scheme of things, as you kinda do feel some things when you drive straight. So you're basically not going to feel every little bump and little pebble on the road, so to say. The triggers, however, do feel somewhat revolutionary since it kind of helps me pump the gas or brake pedals partially depending on the corners and turns at various speeds and forces such as running over a puddle, which stimulates the amount of resistance on each trigger. So actually playing with a controller can be a fun experience in its own right if you don't feel like buying a steering wheel like those hardcore players. This is definitely want to try in person because this game is perfect to demonstrate what it feels like to have haptic feedback in these controllers. I must mention that the dynamic weather not only looks realistic and pretty, but it plays an effect of how each race feels. This adds variation throughout each course, so sometimes no race ever feels the same to some extent. Just like in real driving, be careful driving under certain weather conditions. Hydroplaning is quite the experience in these games. Whoa, look at the rain particles. Yo. Oh my god. Whoa, Jesus. Whoa. Oh my god, what the That is actually scary. Whoa. Hydroplaning at its finest. Holy crap. The gameplay itself is importantly satisfying as you progress through the game. Gran Turismo 7 makes it really apparent that you're rewarded for it by handing out cars when you complete many goals. The new cafe, while a strange addition admittedly, does offer that quest quality via cafe menus, so completing them does feel really good. Not only it rewards cars, but you get to learn the history with the cafe menu, which caters to much of the car enthusiasts and newcomers who want to get in on that bubble. You also are rewarded for collecting cars, which counts towards your experience to level up, and that unlocks more of the in-game menus and goodies as well. There is plenty of single-player content to do, as it is all familiar with GT fans, while it has some tweaks here and there. Of course, we gotta talk about the cars this time around. It features around 424 cars during release, and surely it will increase with each major update. But right away, there are a nice bundle of cars to choose from. It's a good in-between in relation of GT Sport and something like GT5. GT Sport had around 100 cars-ish, while GT5 had around 1,000. Too much of a good thing can exist within GT, which meant only a handful of cars are premier cars who boast elevated details, while most cars only came in standard detailing. Gran Turismo 7 not only offers a good number of cars, but they all offer premium modeling and detailing, thus making a great middle ground. On top of that, they do offer a nice range of cars, ranging from retro classics to the concept cars that never came to exist. My only complaint here is that they don't currently have the Toyota Celica GTS as previous games did, along with the Evo 9. It would have been nice to see here at launch, since the Toyota Celica was actually my first car I've ever owned. Fun little fact. It's always fun to see the exact model of the cars you've owned in your lifetime to appear in a video game such as this. Otherwise, they provide more enough of my favorites such as these RX-7 and RX-8. Let's not forget about the courses, as they do offer a good number here as well. While some of the detailing is not on par quite with the cars, it's a non-issue for me personally. The vibe and atmosphere remains the same through and through, which is a plus for me. Its soundtrack is something I always love about these games, as I'm a sucker for relaxing music such as the lounge tracks, which I've used on my channel numerous times. Gran Turismo tends to be a humble experience until you start racing on the track, with its sound effects being very authentic and doesn't come off as being super edited like the more arcadey games such as Need for Speed. It adds to that simulation feel all the more. Core aspects of Gran Turismo are apparent and felt intact all in all. However, while I love the game for its highlights, there are detriments that have become very apparent as I make this review. The biggest one of them all, at least for me anyway, is the fact that this is always online, meaning that if servers go down into maintenance or something goes wrong in some way or form, you cannot do anything in the game other than a basic race with some preset cars. Even that doesn't work consistently, as my game just locked up in one offline incident. The fact that I cannot currently play this at every time at my leisure is such a turnoff. You can't even access to your cars because your data is server based, not in your console, which is stupid because you're paying $70 for this PS5 version. Video games should not go through this. I want to get video games to play video games, not to get micromanaged like this, which sucks considering that this is happening to one of my favorite racing franchises here. This was what the Xbox One was going for, which caused massive backlash amongst gamers, and even companies like Sony, of course, got in on the action with their own roasts.
This is how you share your games on PS4. Thanks.
Ironically, Sony not only let this happen to one of their flagship franchises, but also implemented the microtransactions into the game. At first, they appeared to be harmless and optional at first, but the most recent update as of this review has lowered the reward amounts for certain courses that players have used to grind for the in-game money to get the expensive and effective cars. This creates more of the incentive to buy cars with real money. This is especially predatory and egregious when there is the used car lot, which features fast cars that can cost a lot and is only available within a limited time period, very much creating FOMO or fear of missing out on purpose. Of course, there are fast cars that have steep in-game prices to the point where these cars that have been previously featured in other games now cost even more real life money than ever, especially for GT Sport cars being featured here in this game. These modern practices have held the game back from becoming such a great racing game and have become very evident that companies are trying to get away with this in an attempt to milk money from its players. I just also really hate the message every time you're low on currency. Just, ugh, it gets under my skin. What's also fucked up was that none of this was present during the early/review copy phase before the official release. Once that rolled around, it was seemingly snuck in there. Not to mention, on top of its horrible online experience thus far, some of the patches have actually made the game worse more ways than one, besides lacking rewards. One of the recent patches have actually changed the tires of the dirt courses of the license tests, so it's impossible for me to get gold because of that. Luckily, there was another patch that fixed that, but just the fact that it happened was just hilarious but also teeth grinding. One more major gripe I have is the unnecessary implementation of these loot box lookalikes offered in the game. For the most part, they're pretty pointless as you can earn any of these items from the shop at some point in your playthrough. I guess it's just luck regarding to saving money. I just think it's just something it can do without, but it could have been worse, I guess. Thank God there aren't cars locked behind these loot boxes. Oh, look at this car that you won't get. Oh, well, no, I did. It's a Tesla! I got a Tesla! I also wish that the daily miles can be expanded upon and have constant rewards for each set of miles with random items as an incentive to drive more in the game. So that's pretty much it for my major complaints for the most part. Fortunately, such issues regarding to the rewards and pricing have been noticed and officially addressed by the devs, and hopefully action is taken to refine this game back to what it's supposed to be. I just wanted to make this clear. With all the controversies regarding to the game, whether its presentation was overhyped or not, this game could have been objectively been the prettiest, gorgeous graphics and having the greatest racing sim experience. But if I can't play this game anytime I want, especially in the far future, and be riddled with these stupid microtransactions and subpar updates on top of that, This is going to be the biggest detriment as I try to really enjoy this game, especially for that $70 price tag. I would absolutely hate for this to be the reason for my time with GT7 to just come to an end. Like, if you really think about it, especially with the always online thing, this means that anyone who doesn't have the greatest online connection can have access to this game. So ironically, this is one of the most accessible GT games out there, but also it isn't because it's always online, so it's not exactly as accessible to parts of the world where the internet isn't great. This is why always online games suck ass. And that is going to be the biggest detriment as I try to really enjoy this game, especially for that $70 price tag on the PlayStation 5. Meanwhile, there are other nitpicks I do have, such as the menu navigation. It just feels somewhat clunky as I need to go too many steps just to get to this part of the menu, such as the GT Cafe. I should just be able to get to the cafe just by clicking on that yellow icon when it tells me to go back to the cafe. But instead, I have to go back to the main menu after finishing a race, then straight to the cafe, having to go to the garage just to change my car and then buy the upgrades for that specific car just feels absolutely cumbersome. I should be able to change that at the tuning shop and the car editor. Next, I do wish for voiceovers for the dialogue provided in the game. You are greeted by these people with such bright smiles, but only be given text. Voiceovers could have been wonderful, especially for the cafe segments. I highly recommend watching the classic British car TV series Top Gear. It's basically Gran Turismo the show with its love letter sort of nature and passion and all for cars. I would have loved to hear any of the former Top Gear hosts, such as Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond, and of course James May, to provide their voiceovers for the game. It would have made the experience much more vibrant and take that car enthusiasm more passionately, and players could have perhaps been felt more devoted to it. My other gripe I have with this game is the racing line used in this game. In older GT games, the racing line was much more cohesive and functional all in one, as it both clearly indicated the direction but also when to brake so effectively. I don't know when exactly this changed, but it's here in GT7 and I just don't like it as much personally. I don't like have all this clutter on my road, but I do need it, unfortunately, because it makes things a lot easier for me and enjoyable to some extent. But having that blue racing line from back in the day that indicated the redness when it comes to braking, that was a really effective and sort of minimalist sort of design that I really liked back then. Now, with all that out of the way, in the end, I think this does feel like a whole GT experience at its core. Though I haven't tried the online racing myself just yet, I do feel that the same core of love, passion, attention to detail is still present here. But Gran Turismo 7 is riddled with that modern gaming nonsense with the always online design, microtransactions, and other such bullshit. And that is indeed its biggest flaw as of right now. Whether you take the developer's statement seriously or not, I want to see action. I want to see this game back on its feet, hopefully in the future. Otherwise, I'm going to have to give this game a 7 out of 10 as of is. When it works, I have that same love for GT in general, but the detriments plus its other faults do bring it down to this score. Now with that said, if you do own a PS5 and ache for that racing game, I can recommend it. It really does show off the graphical power of the PlayStation 5. So you might just spend time finishing a race and then just staring at the replay because of its graphics. But just be vigilant of the timing of the purchase is all. Again, I really hope to see the game hopping back on its feet and be that flagship title that I can hang on to during much of its lifetime. Oh, and add the 2001 Toyota Celica GTS, please, and thank you. And thank you to all for tuning in for my review for Gran Turismo 7. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have any comments about Gran Turismo, please leave them down below. I love to read them. This has been a review for Gran Turismo 7. Thank you to all again, and I'll see you in the next one. Sean out.